Alright, guys.
You're with Cafe.
I'm with Cafe.
Okay.
So I'm Geoff. I'm here with Robyn Urback, and that was a great lecture. I really appreciate it. It's good to see women standing up for boys and men in the media. You talked a little bit about the bias that you noticed from other sources, other media sources. Can you just briefly characterize what is the main bias that you see in the media in the way it covers gender?
Well, I mean, there's this tendency to underemphasize or not even sort of acknowledge some of the struggles that affect boys and men. And we know based on statistics that especially for young men, those are very precarious years, especially when we're talking about mental health, and those issues really are not very well articulated or acknowledged in the media. Also, when we talk about movements to support men's health, men's mental health, men's groups, they're sort of either ignored or maligned. I think there's this taboo that's associated with the so-called MRAs, and I think that puts off a lot of media organizations. They don't want to touch those sorts of things. It's far too controversial. So I think that's kind of where the media lands at present when it comes to those issues.
I'm really curious, what is your opinion about gender roles? What do you think causes gender roles? Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't know. I don't think much about gender roles. I think, you know, to each her own, to each his own. You know, some people opt for the more traditional gender roles, some people don't.
Do you think that they might play a role in society, that there might be a function to them?
Well, I mean, I think generally, if you're talking about Canadian society, we still, there's still that lingering idea that women primarily take care of children and men go to work, and I think that's part of the barriers that we see with women working. Is trying to balance the home life and the working life. And when we talk about discrepancies in terms of pay between men and women, often we're not taking into account the fact that women sometimes work fewer hours to be home more with their children. We don't see men sort of doing that as much. So I think those roles definitely still exist. I think it's changing ever so slowly, though. I mean, we are hearing about more men staying home and women becoming the primary breadwinners, so we'll see where that goes.
What about the more superficial aspects of gender, like, you know, the way you speak, the way you dress? How do you think that, what do you think about that in general?
Well, I mean, I think those things still affect perceptions. I think that's part of the problem, for example, when it comes to men seeking professional help for mental health issues. There's still that idea that to be male, to be masculine, is to look strong and to look well and to be well put together, and physical manifestations of weakness don't bode well with that idea we have of traditional masculinity, and the inverse kind of with women. When we see these strong professional women, it kind of juxtaposes with this idea of what a traditional woman should be. So I think those physical manifestations still affect our perception of what women and men should be.
Who do you think suffers more, men or women?
I don't think I could say. I think men and women have individual challenges that can't really be compared. I think we're talking about apples and oranges. Women suffer in certain ways that men don't, and women are privileged in certain ways that men are not. And the same goes for men. Men are privileged in ways that women aren't, and men suffer in ways that women never will.
Which gender do you think is winning?
I don't know. I'd love to give like a witty, funny answer. I don't have one.
Well, you know, the Pan Am Games are coming up.
Yeah.
So,
Pan Am Games, who cares about that?
Which gender do you think is going to win the Depression Olympics?
I don't know. Where should I put my money? Do you have any tips? I don't know.
It's kind of a silly game, though, isn't it?
In terms of who's suffering more, who's winning? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the problem that we have when we talk about these issues, and when we have these discussions like the ones that we had this evening. There's this perception that, well, men are winning at the game of life. So, you know, what reason is there to get together and to talk about the issues that are facing men, to talk about the misperceptions of men in the public sphere, in the media, because men are winning, because men have the upper hand in society, where first of all, I think it's of no use to really compare. And second of all, it's a moot argument, because people are not genders, people are individuals, and every individual has a struggle that they have to deal with. So it's not worth framing it in that sort of way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I noticed that you have a lot of humor in some of your articles. Where is that coming from? Do you think that helps you maybe to tackle some of these gender issues?
Yes and no. I think sometimes I come off as a bit sarcastic as a way to, frankly, make my writing a little bit more interesting, and for some reason that offends people a little bit more. So if I'm talking about the hypocrisy of, for example, staging a protest and boycotting a talk about men's issues as a form of creating a safe space, I will mock that outright in a column. And that pisses people off, and I understand why that pisses people off, but sometimes things are so ridiculous, especially when it comes to trying to suppress free speech, that I think the only thing you can do is mock it. So that's what I do, and I suffer the blowback because of it.
I've noticed that humor tends to be on the side of free speech, and humor, I think, does have a function. I mean, it can be enlightening, it can be used for teaching, it can be used to break taboos, it can be used to overcome criticism, or to launch criticisms, to challenge people and to get them to think. I have another question. Okay. If men are in charge, do you think men are in charge?
In charge of what?
The world. Society.
No, I wouldn't say men are in charge.
Well, don't they dominate the political sphere? Aren't there more male politicians? Aren't there more male CEOs?
Of course, well, there's this conspiracy, but I don't think we can talk about it on camera. Oops.
Sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
If men, let's suppose hypothetically men were in charge,
right,
would that mean that they're the cause of their own problems, so you shouldn't even pay attention to men's problems?
It's interesting. I had a colleague, I don't know if this really relates to your question. It might be a total digression, but I thought of it. I had a colleague who asked me the other day, and by the other day I mean several months ago, he was writing a column about, well, what would happen if women ran the world in terms of all of the world's leaders were women? Do you think that there wouldn't be any wars? Would there not be any conflicts? Would there not be any, political hostilities between countries? And I think there was once that idea, and that idea was once sort of considered mainstream, but I think it's gone now. I think we kind of recognize that, like, men and women have their own unique challenges, but they're not that different. They function as humans, and sometimes they fight each other, and sometimes they get along, and sometimes they protest, and sometimes, they boast about things. So I don't know. That doesn't answer the question.
One last question.
Sure.
What do you think about divisive dichotomies like, say, feminist versus anti-feminist, pro-men versus pro-women, feminist versus traditionalist?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? Do you think those contribute to the media bias?
Yeah, well, I think there's a problem in that we throw around these words all the time, but we don't really have much of a definition. So what does it mean to be a feminist? Does it mean that I think women should be entitled to equal rights as men? Absolutely, sure, I'm a feminist. Do you think I'm but someone else might have a completely different idea of what a feminist means, or what an anti-feminist means. And I think that's also an issue that comes into play when we talk about rape culture, for example, which of course is dominating media, and we talk about it all the time, but it's very hard to define. So if you ask one person what rape culture is, it's one thing. It's the fact that we make light of situations of sexual assaults. And if you ask someone else what rape culture is, it's this ingrained idea that men have power over women. I think the problem with these terms is that they're so loosely defined. And when we create these dichotomies, we're really, they're invalid because we don't have definitions of them. So it serves really no purpose to put one up against the other unless we really define what we mean by them.
Okay, I think that's all I have to just talk about. Okay,
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.